You ever have an interest so niche you don't know if anyone else would have it? Well, Donkey Kong Country Returns is a gorgeous game. Its sequel even more so, but hidden amongst platforming perfection, buried away behind layers of menu and locked behind arbitrary coin spending, the duology shares one more thing. Something completely inconsequential. They both have, tucked away in their extras, a gallery of figurines. Rotatable, observable, collectible figures of characters and environments from the two games. I never knew why, but I wanted every last one of these. To spin around and analyze every last one of these. Realistically, these things had zero impact on the game I was playing. Zero. But I don't care. I'm still very glad these exist. They're fascinating. Oddly fascinating. I asked a psychologist, "What's wrong with me?" They said, "Sir, it's Figuromania." Statues. In-game statues. 3D renders of characters, enemies, items, or other miscellaneous things from around a game. Frozen in place and usually fixed onto some kind of base, like a figurine. Collectible and displayed in some random little extras gallery stored away besides other optional side content. This is something I have always appreciated the inclusion of in a game, and something I often lament the absence of when without. To have a small, totally pointless replica of an in-game thing, a statue I can rotate, zoom in and out of, and examine at my own leisure, it's something of a marvel to me. Yes, this is the impossibly narrow pocket of human interest you've wandered into. Enjoy your visit, I guess. For as long as I remember, any game that randomly included a gallery of figures or statues was able to keep me ensnared within it for an unusually long time, just transfixed on these virtual sculptures. But what makes a good in-game figure gallery? Let's take a look at a decent contender for the best to ever do it. The title of the wealthiest, most comprehensive, and probably objectively the best figure gallery in gaming belongs to the trophy roster of Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U. Spanning a preposterous 743 trophies and containing a glorious variety of characters and models, it's got to be the most iconic figure gallery out there. Structurally, it's a good representation of the genre, a slideshow you can traverse at your own pace, with each slide presenting a figure you've acquired. Each figure a static 3D model just sort of suspended in cosmic Smash space.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest.
The ability to rotate or magnify the model, granted, and Smash Bros, since its pioneering of the figure gallery, including a few complementary features like some flavor text, series logos, and trivia besides the statue, just giving you a bit more to chew on. Smash's trophies do figure galleries well, very well, its biggest strength being the sheer volume of viewable models it has, without sacrificing quality for quantity, that is. The customary polish and general aesthetic quality of first-party Nintendo doesn't waver at any point here, and one special thing this has over most other galleries is its colourful collection of differing art styles. Since the gallery's contents pertain to so many unique game series, we are also treated to each one's unique style. Overall, this is one of the most well put together figure galleries you'll find, and is probably the king of the genre, but it is not my favourite one. There are several great ambassadors for the figure gallery. Paper Mario the Origami King has a decently comprehensive gallery, 120 objects and characters captured and presented as collectible statues, each one a miniature piece of faux papercraft artwork which, when cast over the warm chestnut glow of the game's treasure gallery, gives me a more cozied up by the campfire vibe when viewing. Kirby and the Forgotten Land bears an impressive 256 figurine collection. The vibrancy and whimsical floatiness of Kirby's art style translating well into more plasticky figures, and while not quite Smash-esque, 250 plus entries here is commendable. With this one, they've made an effort to contextualize these models as in-universe toys, as literal collectible figurines. Several aesthetic embellishments like the gacha machines they can be obtained from having banners stuck on them representing the different series of figures, backed up further by the different volumes the figures are categorized into, each figure having a designated rarity, and most importantly to this video, the acknowledgement of physics and gravity in the design of the figurines. In many other figure galleries, bits and pieces of models can be suspended in the air without physical support, obviously because the thing they're depicting has floating parts and because they're allowed to exist within a world ungoverned by science. But a figure with floating parts is, of course, a physical impossibility. And if that sort of arrogant disregard for realism shatters your immersion in your video game toys, you need not worry about the Forgotten Land, because they have so humbly included small plastic support beams to hold floating elements in place in order to keep these figures realistic and believable. Overall, Kirby and the Forgotten Land has a pretty robust figure gallery. Each model is articulate and expressive enough to hold your interest for 10 to 20 seconds or so. They chose to do the plastic toy thing and did it as good as it could be done. I can acknowledge the charm of the idea, but it isn't for me. I prefer to look at my in-game statue and think, yeah, there's some weight and solid craftsmanship to this thing, as opposed to, man, this is a neat-looking mass-produced Chinese plastic worthless toy. The collectible toy thing has been lent into even more in games like Doom Eternal, where you literally collect exaggerated plastic chibi versions of enemies to put on your shelf, but when the figure becomes something this stylistically different to what it's depicting, it's not the same for me. You can find various random games that include figure galleries. The 3DS's Chibi Robo Ziplash, for example. It does figurines to the most mediocre degree, mostly soulless looking models and a general bland, cheap quality to them, but hey, the game's better with them, and it's not like they had the most jaw-dropping character designs to work with anyway. And I kid you not, literally over 120 of its figurines are just reposes of Chibi Robo. Now, I can't tell if this one is my favourite or not. It's wrestling for first place with something else, but Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, this game fashioned out of a meticulous and loving clay art style, offers a very simple yet extremely pleasurable figurine viewing experience. The complete devotion to creating the illusion of clay sculptures sitting around in an artist's quaint amateur studio here is very tasteful, and shows how a figure gallery can be stylized so heavily yet so successfully. I think the appeal of static figure galleries runs quite parallel to the appeal of general model or character compendiums and viewers. Think Pokemon's Pokedex, a compendium of every Pokemon in the game able to be flicked through and studied in one gallery. A moving figure gallery, if you will. Subjects are still standing in one place for you to observe and examine, just bobbing or swaying to some looped idle animation. A similar enjoyment for me, if not exactly figures. Any games with a creature collecting mechanic tend to do this best. Yokai Watch's Yokai Medallion, Ni no Kuni's Creature Compendium, the Persona compendiums of, well, Persona. And then I guess as an estranged cousin to the figure gallery are more elaborate collections of entities like the Piccolopedia, or any catalogues where each item has a glimpse of in-game context rather than an isolated sample of it. Or in the absolute other direction of collectible artifacts of in-game things are less elaborate collections like the capture cards in Super Paper Mario, where the enjoyment comes more in the act of collecting them and not as much from studying their contents. All things I like, but not in-game statues. Now, in my opinion, to see a masterclass in both Figuromania fundamentals and innovations we should look to, as I mentioned, the Donkey Kong Country Returns duology. Tropical Freeze has a regular set of figures to inspect, the first game doesn't. They're the usual thing, some of the Kongs, some of enemies, bosses, etc. There's not a huge amount of them and there's no fancy background or anything like that, but they do a cracking job and honestly are just some of the most solid and respectable we've seen so far. Good, high quality, articulate models, up there with the greats, truly. But the games aren't home only to figurines of mere individual characters. While these are an addition I do adore, where my need for in-game statues becomes truly insatiable is in the much more elaborate and entrancing constructions of dioramas. Where a figure is a statue representing a thing, a diorama is a statue representing a scene or an environment. And the amount of character, charm, and paradoxically extremely expressive yet completely still 3D illustration crammed into DKCR's dioramas are how you do in-game statues. Across the games are a collective 14 dioramas. Each one is a miniature statue version of one of the in-game worlds. These are flowing and intricate configurations, entire themed worlds concentrated each into one dense microcosm of visual content, all of them feeling like overflowing, affectionate celebrations of their corresponding world. Just beautiful, supernaturally captivating actually. Absolute cinema. Are these things good for anything apart from just sitting and looking at? Nope. Not at all. These do not matter. But man, can I burn time away exhausting these of every nook and cranny they have. To have before me intangible statues adorned with the imagery of familiar worlds, just floating in a virtual ether. This is something I really like for no practical reason. But there must be some reason as to why these in-game statues have so vividly this weird, comforting appeal. A trivial or random reason, I'm sure, but I mean, this Reddit post, decorated with a formidable 3 upvotes and 1 commenter by user IntelligentMan7780 asking for games with figure galleries, would suggest to me this isn't just a me thing. People from all different fandoms and interests like to have figurines or statues from their favourite franchises, whether that be to fill shelves and cabinets or just to pick up one of a certain character you like. And despite never having owned a decorative statue or anything, I've always thought the best of them look objectively cool, and it's easy to understand why someone would want to own something like this. It's a decorative item that looks cool. Humans decorate their living spaces with things they find aesthetically pleasing. This isn't exactly a revelation. I know a lot of people find the appeal of owning like an anime or video game statue to be having a physical representation of something they like. A physical representation, a real thing to hold and have. This is different to having access to a virtual representation of something you like, especially when that access to a virtual representation is already buried within the thing you like that you already own. And at face value, a statue made of pixels that you can't touch or hold has infinitely less value than a real tangible one. So what gives? What's the appeal of these in-game statues that aren't even real? Imagine having the freedom to explore an entire museum at your fingertips, a museum themed around an IP you love, with each of this museum's exhibits being a miniature encapsulation of some small part of that IP, all viewable with a stereoscopic freedom and ease impossible for something of worldly nature. Having the ability to switch between any one of these hundreds of exhibits in seconds, yet to stay on any one of them for hours, being able to access this museum whenever you want. A utopian museum, where colours don't fade and dust doesn't collect. I think that's the appeal of in-game statues and figures for me, skipping the clunky, arduous and expensive process of acquiring and allocating space to and having to manually inspect a statue of something, and instead having full comprehensive access to many more statues that are just perpetually free for viewing. The commitment needed to attain something physical entirely removed, and a whole gallery of intangible micro art pieces instead. each one sculpted with a vibrancy and whimsy possible only in a space unbound from the shackles of dampening natural lighting and the withering air of reality. Wealthy treasuries that are and will forever remain in perfect condition, localized entirely behind a screen and a few buttons in the palms of your hands. In summary, I too broke to have real statue, so have video game statue instead, perchance. To express this bizarrely niche and unimportant interest of mine, and to have a title for the video, I put together a word to describe it. That's right, Figuromania, with the Latin figura meaning shape, figure or form, and the Greek mania meaning madness or obsession, colliding in a blasphemously amateur act of etymological Frankensteining to produce the term Figuromania. And I know it should have been prefixed to become like cyber Figuromania or virtual Figuromania or something, because I'm on about statues in video games, but you know, I didn't want the title to be too much of a word salad. And then, once I recognized Figuromania, a lot of other little things in games I'd played, things that weren't exactly statues but things I still had a similar interest in, they started to make more sense. Case in point, world maps that use dioramas as the entrance to each level. The Super Mario Galaxy games do this. Each level is represented in its world map with a toy-scale mini-model version of itself, usually a bite-sized condensation of each stage's visual level design, whether that be just a general mashup of a level's aesthetic or a particular landmark or set-piece feature on its own. Unlocking my next galaxy and having a new tiny planetoid cluster to marvel at was always a brief but appreciated dopamine splash for me. Some of my favourites being Slimy Spring, Space Junk, Boo Moon, Freeze Flame, Melty Monster. Any other ones with significant moving parts like Chomp Works or Haunty Halls get bonus points because it feels like I'm looking at a little moving clockwork souvenir from each galaxy. But less focal articulated parts like water effects or slowly revolving planetoids and items go a long way for me. The only thing with Galaxy's pre-level statues that detracts from their appeal is how simple they are. Like Throwback Galaxy. Yep, that's the level, but small and smooth and like it could be a wearable hat for a Roblox character. I mean, I know they are made to be simple, I'm not complaining, it's not like I'm expecting a tropical freeze level diorama for every stage, but these can't hold a person's gaze for too long. Luckily, we don't even have to stray out of the same game series to find a superior alternative. Super Mario 3D World and Land employ much more elaborate models for each course. Basically all of them this time incorporating many intricately placed and small moving parts, all coordinating with each other to synthesize a dense, bite-sized, organic feeling architectural slice of remarkably stimulating 3D craftsmanship. Some of my favorite picks from 3D Land have to be World 5-4, 8-1, 1-2, 6-4, and for 3D World, well, honestly, all of 3D Worlds are pretty good. These at times feel like their own self-contained Mario ecosystems or terrariums full of living enemies and items that I'm glimpsing into. I'd say these are the furthest pushers of the bar when it comes to pre-level dioramas. Honestly, the things I would give to have a separate little side content thing where there's a gallery of these and you can just analyze the models instead of having to awkwardly stand in the world map and just eyeball them. The use of miniature 3D representations of larger courses and areas isn't that rare an inclusion to platformers, mostly. Sonic Lost World has some decent ones. New Super Mario Bros. Wii has a modest set of 9 with its World Select menu, and I think I get a similar attraction from some of the animated banners that appear in the 3DS home menu when you insert different game cartridges. For me, these fall in with old game manuals as unnecessary but still appreciated pleasant accessories to the game itself. Another one I remember fondly is from a forgotten favourite racer of mine, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed. It has these islands for each track that look more literally like a chunk of the race has been lifted out of the ground and suspended in Sega sky space. I like these, probably a bit too much because of nostalgia, but most of them feel a tad empty or bland. Temple Trouble, Dream Valley, Galactic Parade and Egg Hanger are some of the better ones. Maybe Sanctuary Falls as well. Looking at in-game dioramas for long enough can tempt the imagination. Wandering away at these statues, conceptualizing even further inner workings and substructures and secret passageways and hidden anatomy that could be encased within these in-game statues. What if there was a fully modeled cave system just through this doorway? What if this pyramid model could be opened up to reveal layers of internally sculpted architecture? Or this haunted house to reveal several ghostly crooked floors decorating the interior, brimming with booze. What if you could exist within this miniature world? What if you could walk amongst a gallery of figurine environments? What if there was a game about navigating through small, self-contained model areas, just like the dioramas and models we've discussed? Wouldn't it be cool if that was a game? I'd definitely play it. Shouldn't Nintendo do that? I'd probably mention it somewhere in this video.
Explore a variety of tricky sandbox-style levels inspired by Japanese box gardens called Hakoniwa. Inspired by Japanese box gardens called Hakoniwa. You can rotate the camera.
So, Captain Toad, Treasure Tracker. As the gentleman just said, levels inspired by Hakoniwa. Japanese box gardens, otherwise called miniature gardens or diorama gardens for the purpose of this video. A game and design philosophy both aesthetically and mechanically built around puzzling your way through 82 miniature bursts of compact, elaborate, dioramic Mario Universe architecture. These levels, almost unanimously suspended in some vacuous empty expanse, cut out of a simple cubic mold and able to be examined and picked apart in a much more interactive and captivating, yet fundamentally similar vein to any one of the trophies, sculptures, figurines or dioramas I, and perhaps you if you've made it this far, am so pointlessly enthralled by. To be able to not just study and inspect the 3D statue hovering before you, but to literally be able to navigate throughout all of its little corners and crevices yourself, to be allowed to exist within them. That is a cruel thing to be offered in finite supply to a Figuromaniac. Welcome to the outro, my esteemed viewer. This video was a fun one to put together and is definitely the hardest I've worked on a video so far on my channel. I started making this one just 2 weeks and 1 day ago, which, goddamn, I did this one quick. I think I'm quite proud of this one, so hopefully this picks up a couple views, although I understand in-game statues probably isn't exactly the blockbuster AAA million view algorithmic sensation I kind of want for the channel right now, but anywho, video done. If you're listening to this right now, then that means Figuromania worked for at least one person, so thanks for witnessing my ultra niche passion project. If you liked the video, hated the video, or thought anything of it, feel free to drop a small piece of literature in the comment section down below containing your original human thoughts about my video. I love reading comments. Oh, and also, Merry Christmas. Merry Crimbo. It's that time of year again. Good tidings to you and your kin, as it's Christmas time. Hope you all had a very merry 25th of December, and a happy new year I wish onto you all. If I had to guess, I'd say my next video will be out in 2 or 3 months and will be a bigger video than this one for sure. So back to the dungeon you all go, my loyal viewers. Back to content starvation for another few months. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. Thanks for watching. Lugalan.